welcome to The Lobby every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific right here on GameSpot.com. Well, I shouldn't really say that because it won't be here at 2 p.m. Pacific next week because we're in Game of the Year season. Game of the Year! This is the very special penultimate episode of The Lobby where we will be revealing GameSpot's Games of the Year 2014. The nominees for, rather, because next week we'll be announcing our Game of the Year on a very special episode of The Lobby next Thursday, and we'll be trickling out winners every day between then and now. But today is nominee day.
I like
today,
to describe it as a very special episode. It's like an after-school episode of The Lobby.
It's the one where we take on the tough issues.
It's the one we don't play video games, where we just talk about all the stuff that came out of days and days of screaming at each other in a basement meeting room of saying who should be on the shortlist for Games of the Year in all our platforms. And
Which is how Game of the Year awards are chosen, is that we're locked in a room. And in this case, we weren't locked in a room with food or drinks. Like that really helps speed up the process, because I've done this in years before in other outlets where you're given food, and this is hours and hours long process that involves fighting for the game that you love. And in this case, you're locked in the room, and there is no food or water. You want to get this over with as quickly as possible.
If you ever want to eat again, you better come to a decision.
That's almost like, it's like by design, I feel, but it didn't work because I remember.
There was a lot of yelling.
Well, on day 2, we were here like 2 hours past office hours still.
Yeah.
Everyone's screaming about what should be in the nominees list.
Yeah, I slammed my hand on the table a few times. Thanks to Tyree.
We're not friends anymore.
No. It was a lot of discussion, but I think we've come down to some very interesting lists. So today we have our platform awards. That's every platform that we'll be covering on GameSpot's Game of the Year, and the last nominee list we'll be talking about will be our actual Game of the Year, which is actually kind of open to any game that's been out this year. It's not necessarily you need to win a platform. So let's get the show on the road. First of all, we're going to have a look at a brand new category for this year, which is Best Reissue. So let's take a look at the nominees.
I never open on a first date.
That way, you great big Balverin turd! Mega Ray Quasar.
I know, cowboy, it's okay. And I love it.
And those are the nominee for Best Reissue, a new category here on GameSpot's Game of the Year Awards. So folks, a lot of great games came out this year in reissued form with new modes, new graphics, whatever. We ended up knocking it down to 5. So for you guys, why do you think a game like, say, Grand Theft Auto 5, do you think that was enough to get it within this category of nominees?
But it was really hard just even narrowing down the nominees, because it's not just how good was the game when it came out originally, it's what did they add to it, how much was layered on. And Grand Theft Auto is just a great example of a game that is a remaster. I mean, it looks a lot better, but they added so much content that you're able to do things you weren't able to do in the original game. They added the first-person mode, doing peyote, let you be an animal and fly through the air.
I think if you talk about looks a lot better, Grand Theft Auto 5 is not the best example. I think like Metro Redux and Fable Anniversary, these are games that have like entirely new art assets, and just like with Fable, you've got a new lighting engine, like all this stuff that just revivifies these games and brings them to life in a way that is sort of keeps pace with what modern standards are, and really gives you a new way to appreciate how friggin' great they are.
But no game was done more.
Hey, give me a chance.
I was going to throw to you because you're Pokemon.
This is what it was like.
What is it about Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire?
Okay, well, I want to talk about GTA. You want to hear about that? Or
Okay, no, go GTA first.
Because no, I mean, you're talking about these games that like look better, right? Maybe Grand Theft Auto, the graphical upgrade wasn't so big of a deal, but the first-person mode totally changed the way that game has an impact on you as a player, and therefore like what you do in that game. I mean, things are so much more personal and brutal. For me, that had such a big impact on my interpretation of what makes that game special.
It's certainly a strong contender, but what about Pokemon?
Right, so Pokemon,
so much more personal and brutal, like Peter was saying.
Yeah, because this is coming from games that were on the Game Boy Advance. It was a 32-bit system, but it was still 2D, little sprites, very much in the same vein as the older Game Boy games, just with color for the most part. This has taken that game and expanded it, or those two games expanded them in a 3D world where it feels like a more modern game. It is sort of recreating the old one, like almost verbatim for the story, but it adds new stuff. You have these mega evolutions of Pokemon where you collect these stones and you get this sort of like one instance per battle, like mega sort of evolution, and it's that part's interesting. But it's like Pokemon for a new generation, but an old game. So as a reissue, it's great because it really does revitalize it.
And it's not even just borrowing what Pokemon X and Y did. It's doing new stuff as well. Like this is almost in some ways kind of a sequel to those games in terms of the new features it adds.
A little bit, yeah. It does kind of treat it that way with the intro as well, which is.
And I think it's worth noting also, you guys tell me who the nominees for this to guess who the nominees for this category are 2 months ago. There's no way Halo, the Master Chief Collection is missing my nomination for this category.
Sure.
Exactly,
But,
so I wanted to ask you about this because, of course, you reviewed the game. Quite a tumultuous review process because the game was just broken.
You can't play that game multiplayer reliably. I mean, it's been getting incrementally better slowly, but like by half steps and sometimes back steps, and it's just... The campaign stuff in there is incredible. What they've done with Halo 2 Anniversary, the campaign experience, all the new Blur cutscenes are just awesome. But you got to take the game as a whole when it comes to these awards because an award is a recommendation, is an honor for the game, and to honor Halo, the Master Chief Collection in this category would be to be basically ignoring the huge problems with all the multiplayer stuff there, which is a big reason why so many people were so into that game, myself included.
And then our fifth nominee, Diablo 3 Ultimate Evil Edition, a game which you could argue that the expansion pack and then Ultimate Evil Edition arguably fixed that game.
Oh yeah, I think one of our editors or someone in the meeting, I can't remember who said, I can't believe Diablo 3 went from like my biggest disappointment one year to my favorite game the next year, just because of all the changes that, aggregated over the year and then culminated with the Ultimate Evil Edition. I mean, and plus playing it on console actually feels like, I've played Diablo games in the past and really enjoyed them, but just the feel of the sticks, the feel of them of this on next-gen console is incredible.
And lastly, I guess the last elephant in the room would be a lot of people probably shouting in the chat right now asking, where's The Last of Us? Why did The Last of Us not make it onto the list? This was a point of a bit of contention at our meeting for sure.
Well, like I said earlier, it's not necessarily just how good the game was originally. I mean, The Last of Us Remastered is still an amazing experience, an amazing game, just like The Last of Us, but it didn't really add that much outside of that graphical upgrade. And it's beautiful. If you didn't play it on PS3, I recommend playing on PS4, and I would play it again on PS4. I'm looking forward to trying it out again. I haven't played it this year, but it was mostly just a graphical upgrade.
But yeah, and I think there's a difference here too when you talk about graphical upgrades, because coming from last year a PS3 release versus like an Xbox release with Fable Anniversary, I mean, there's way different scopes for graphical upgrades and for the kind of work that goes into it and for the kind of change that kind of upgrade can affect on the gameplay. And I think what it came down to for The Last of Us Remastered is, yes, it looks a little better. Yes, Left Behind is included on this disc, and it's a great deal, and it's totally highly recommended. But in terms of best reissue, it just wasn't up to snuff for our category.
Exactly. Hopefully Left Behind might get a look in at some stage in the nominees as well. I guess we'll have to wait and find out. Those are the nominees for best reissue. The winner of that will be announced on GameSpot.com tomorrow, December 10th. All right, the nominees continue. Next up, best mobile video game. Let's check out the nominees.
People are scared of you. I mean, Look at your face. Who'd you get in a fight with? A fable, right?
Should've walked out of here when you had the chance.
And those are the nominees for Best Mobile Game on GameSpot's Game of the Year 2014. All right, a nice breath there. Games which could come out on consoles and PCs, games which are very much handheld phone games, and then games that you can basically play on whatever platform you want.
Which is totally indicative of the whole mobile experience. I mean,
Yes.
you know, it casts a huge net, so this category is tough to like sort of narrow it down because people play on different size mobile devices in so many different ways. That's what makes it a really cool, diverse
This used
category.
to be best phone game. Like, that's what you'd think of. You think of, oh, games I could play there, because we've already got categories for stuff like 3DS and Vita, so they're not in here. This is more like tablets and whatnot. But there's so many ways to play these games. And one of the games which is arguably played on PC as much as it is on mobile devices is Hearthstone.
And that's one of the arguments that we talked a lot about. Is this an award for a game that you are going to play while you're waiting, or is this a game that, like with Hearthstone, where you're sitting at home and this is an experience where you need Wi-Fi and it's a very in-depth, like this isn't something that you're just playing to pass the time. When you get into Hearthstone, it is an all knockdown, drag-out fight to win over your opponent. And Blizzard just does such a great job of making a free-to-play game feel like it has so much behind it. It doesn't feel like just a kind of a quick cash-in. It feels like they put all of the love of all of the Blizzard properties, all of the Warcraft properties behind it.
And the incredible depth of the decks people build and the strategic interplay, and how even this week how fired up everyone is getting about the updates and the new cards and stuff like that. It's just incredible.
Hearthstone definitely a strong contender in our nominees this year. A completely different type of mobile experience, sort of a personal and one you'd play, I guess, while you're sort of in your bed just before sleep is how I've been playing it. Monument Valley.
Yeah, so I don't really like to distinguish the mobile games that way personally. Like, yeah, maybe that's where you play it. Maybe Hearthstone is like a bigger experience, but I think Monument Valley is not like it stands on its own for the quality of its art, for the inventiveness of its levels and its atmosphere. And I hate to say like, oh, it's one of the best games that you would just play like on the bus or something.
Right.
Like,
you don't want to qualify it.
No, I don't want to. I think it's a great game that happens to be on mobile and is like a really unique artistic experience that, I mean, even on any platform would be great. You know, it doesn't have to be mobile.
One of the things we're used to on mobile games is companies taking established franchises and then sort of making mobile versions of them, which are either terrible copycats of the core gameplay of the actual game or just throwaway nonsense.
Or like a companion app.
Yeah, something like that. It turns out Hitman Go is actually pretty great.
I know there was such a surprise that when they announced Hitman Go, I thought it would just kind of be something that's a throwaway, like you're not going to want to play it. But they take that Hitman aesthetic and they put it into like a board game wrapper, and it makes you feel like you're playing Hitman, but from the point of view of playing a board game, and you're still using stealth and you're still using, well, in some cases you use stealth, but you have to use your brain in ways that Hitman always challenges you, that you're not just looking for the most direct route out of some place. You want to assassinate your targets or get out stealthily without being found.
It is this really fascinating distillation of that formula, and you almost imagine that like maybe the game designers, this is like how they work out level design for a full-fledged Hitman game, right?
Yeah.
Like, all right, so in the tennis club level, we're gonna have these pathways and stuff like that.
Sort of flow chart or something.
But yeah, but the sort of mental challenge is still there, even when you break it down.
And making it into a board game also makes it look really good. Like, if you tried to make a full Hitman game on tablet, it probably wouldn't come across as well as getting to make these little like handcrafted characters that you're moving around on a really cool looking game board.
And this is the guy who has like tons of amiibos on his desk.
Yeah, good point. Another game which a lot of folks in our meetings, or at least these types of games, have been playing on PC or on console. The Wolf Among Us has made it onto the nominees list for Best Mobile Game. What do you think it is about the Wolf Among Us that gets it into this category?
I think this is one of the this game is sort of indicative more than like Hearthstone of the sort of the parity of experience between mobile, console, PC. Not that every experience is going to be the same, but that like the quality heights you can reach are equal across the board. And I think Wolf Among Us is a game that a lot of people in our discussions enjoyed on console and enjoyed on PC and enjoyed on mobile. And so it's sort of, that becomes part of the discussion as well. Like, how does it get there? But I think, the way that this is, the story-focused aspect, the episodic aspect, really make it like a book you read before you go to bed. Like it fills that kind of place niche. Or like I'm sitting out on the porch, I'm playing it, and mobile discussions are kind of hard to divorce from where you are when you're playing it, but I think no matter where you are with A Wolf Among Us, it draws you in because that world is so unique, because what they do with the world is so fascinating. And honestly, personally, I didn't really like episode 1. It didn't really jibe with my enjoyment of the Fables franchise in graphic novel form. But then I think over the course of the season, they just developed it into something really, really awesome.
One of the best things they did was actually get those chapters out in relatively quick succession as well, which is not something Telltale have always done. And I guess our last nominee, I can hear the chat already. Why isn't 2048 in there? Why did Threes make the cut?
Threes is the original, man!
So yeah, if you're arguing for 2048, you are just completely in the wrong. Threes they made this idea, 2048, is not only easier, but it's not as much fun. It's not as lovingly crafted as Threes is. I mean, when you look at the little art for the card characters that they made, it's adorable.
Look
and
at that 768, it's so cool!
Yeah, he has horns and wings, but Threes is definitely the more traditional phone game. When you think of like, oh, I'm going to play something on my phone, this is the thing you do to pass the time. But it draws you in. The more you play it, the more you learn what those strategies are, and that there is more than you're not just randomly sliding things around on the board. There's a definite order to this chaos.
There's that thinking ahead, move after move, and like anticipating what's coming next. And sometimes you know what it's going to be, but other times you're like playing probabilities and based on your previous experience. And then you get into the whole leaderboard battle with Mark Walton in the UK, who's got like a 6-figure score. Son of a
hacks.
But yeah, I mean, the amount. I think that Threes is one of the few games for me that is responsible for me missing a stop on my train ride home.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great, that's an interesting 5 nominees. It's going to be real interesting to see who wins that one. December 11th on GameSpot.com is when we'll be announcing the winner of our best mobile game. Okay, we keep on trucking with this bad boy. We got a bunch more coming up: 3DS, Wii U, Vita, PS3, PS4. But first, let's check out the nominees for best 3DS game.
I will now pronounce the verdict guilty of being a witch.
What?
Hand over the gun.
No, that's impossible.
Objection.
The crystal's glow wanes by the hour. I am Agnes Oblige, servant and vestal to the Crystal of Wind.
And those are the nominees for Best 3DS Game on GameSpot's 2014 Game of the Year Awards. All right, bunch of great games, and I'm feeling the two of you have played all of them. 3DS maniacs, Justin Haywald and Peter Brown.
It's a great system, man. There's a lot of good games out there.
I mean, almost any of these games, I think, could be a winner. They're all just like such wonderful experiences. This has been a great year to be a 3DS gamer.
What I want to talk about first is Bravely Default, because we had a very active discussion downstairs about this one.
Yeah.
Bravely Default is a game that you have sunk something like 120 hours into.
Yeah, just maybe a little bit over
Yeah,
120.
half of which you seem to really enjoy, and then half of which you weren't so sure about.
Bravely Default definitely has a moment that happens, and some people stop liking the game entirely. It gets very tiresome, and it drags on for a very long time. But the mechanics of the game are really what bring it up, that make it a nominee and make it such a memorable experience. No matter what problems I have with the story, the game itself, the gameplay is something that I know Peter loved a lot.
Yeah, I mean, so essentially this game takes the classic like turn-based, Final Fantasy combat, but it introduces a system where you can sacrifice taking a turn in the present, bank it for later. And in doing so, you guard yourself a little bit, but then you also have the ability to deliver multiple, successive hits in a row, which for some bosses that can heal themselves, it's very important to be able to do that. And so it becomes a game of strategy, and it's very, it's sort of figuring out whether or not it's the right move is something that happens throughout the game.
There's no point in the game at which you can just go on, and you can go on autopilot if you cheat, but if you're playing normally, any monster can beat you at any time.
Yeah, and then it's also got a great job class system that's very reminiscent of Final Fantasy Tactics, where essentially you pick a job class, but then beneath that you can assign abilities from other classes that you've already, leveled up and worked within. And then, beyond that, just the music and the art in the world are incredible. Like it's this great sort of like aesthetic that we got with some of the Final Fantasy remakes on the DS, but it's been, it's grown up now in the 3DS. It's got more performance behind it, and it just looks wonderful. Like, yeah, it's a little cute and you might say childish, but that doesn't mean that it's not expressive and great to look at.
And the writing itself is also just so well done. Like, as much as I had to push myself, once I got to that 40-50 hour mark, I had to push myself to finish it. But oh my god, I wanted to play the sequel so much, because there's a trailer that plays at the end that makes you want to play the sequel to this game.
Okay, well, you mentioned Final Fantasy a bunch of times there as well. Theatrhythm, not a game I've played. Why do you think it made the nominees list?
So Theatrhythm is the second game in the series, and it's essentially a rhythm game where you tap on the screen and you do little gestures, or you can use buttons. And you're doing this to songs from soundtracks of old Final Fantasy games. So, on the one hand, it's a game built for people who love the series.
Yeah, clearly.
But this music is so good on its own that you don't have to be a fan of the series to appreciate it, I think. You get more out of it if you recognize the characters and the worlds and the songs, but at the same time, like, it's a good rhythm game, it's got great music, an expressive little world, and contrary to, it takes the first game and then adds like a bunch of like little RPG elements on top of it that incentivize you to play even more and make the game more challenging. It's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of content there too.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes you keep playing it. I mean, it's not just the gameplay, which is similar to the first game, but which was so good. I mean, we haven't gotten another Elite Beat Agents game, which was the high watermark for rhythm games on the DS. This is basically like a spiritual successor in some ways, but with completely new and different modes. But it's those RPG elements and getting to level up your character and having that thing that makes you want to get to know your characters better, or to keep using the same character over and over again.
Yeah, and you can like equip items and stuff. You go through dungeons that have multiple paths that you can revisit with different team members. I mean, there's just a lot there.
2014 also saw the sort of the culmination of two DS fan favorites. Not culmination, the cooperation.
Confrontation?
Confrontation.
Collaboration.
Collaboration. The hot collabo of Mr. Professor Layton and Mr. Phoenix Wright.
Mr. Professor.
I remember when they announced Phoenix Wright versus Professor Layton, and I thought it was an April Fool's joke. Like, there's no way this game is real. And then I was so excited when it was real, and the game lives up to that hype in so many ways. I mean, it's a fun story because it combines that art style of the Layton games and the Phoenix Wright games, which have great cinematics, and gives you a little bit of gameplay of both of them. Because I love the puzzles and I love the story of the Phoenix Wright games, and mashing them up together it's peanut butter and chocolate.
Another fan favorite that returned this year, Super Smash Bros. Not only made it to Wii U, but of course it came out on the 3DS as well.
Yeah, and I think it's like a game that's traditionally reserved for consoles. Considering what they're working with, the 3DS, they pulled it off. Like it's not necessarily the preferred version of the game for people who really like Smash, but just in like a world of its own, it's a great little fighting game on the 3DS that kind of is one of the more impressive games on the system, I think, from a technical level.
And if this had come out at the same time as the Wii U version, there probably would not have been as many people who would buy both. But the fact that they do, you have things that carry over between the versions, like the characters that you create. You can bring your Mii character and the things that you collect, put them onto the Wii U version. It gives you an incentive to play the 3DS version, even once now that the Wii U version's out. And I still go back to my 3DS version. There's the Street Pass games that are built into it as well. That I like collecting those things. I like getting the little challenges, which are separate between the two versions of the game. It's something that gives you a reason to keep coming back to it.
And last but certainly not least, a game that's been popular on a bunch of platforms here in the GameSpot office, Shovel Knight.
Yeah.
One of the best platformers of all time. It is just such a great
That's a tall order,
experience.
Mr. Hayward.
Very tall order.
It is. I would defend this to the death. I know that that Peter does not completely agree with me, and we came to blows in our meeting. But it's just such a lovely game. Like the art style is reminiscent of those 8-bit and Nintendo games, but it adds gameplay and it adds things, of course, you could never do in an NES game.
Yeah, I mean, like we argued about it because we were trying to figure out like what would make the nominees list. But I do think Shovel Knight is a great game, and it incorporates a lot of things from, well, like Mega Man. You've got a little bit of
got some Dark Souls.
Zelda 2. You got Dark Souls in there with the death and rebirth system where you go back to collect your stuff after you die. Kind of like Souls. But yeah, no, I mean, it's got witty writing, great boss battles, great level design. It's a great game. I'm glad it made the list. I'm just glad that Bravely Default also made the list.
Those are 5 great nominees, and we won't have to wait too long to find out who wins. December 12th on GameSpot.com is when we will reveal our 3DS Game of the Year, so make sure you check back to the site then. All right, the truck keeps on running. Next, we're going to stick with Nintendo. This time, not the handheld one, but the bigger, slightly bigger handheld one that hooks up to your television. Or if you're Patrick Klepek, you plug it into an airplane and then just play it on your seat.
Absolutely. It's a mobile system, too.
It's pretty crazy. Here are our Wii U nominees. And those are our Wii U nominees for Game of the Year on GameSpot.com. Okay, good year for the Wii U, it turns out, 2014. Bunch of great games.
Oh, yeah.
Best year. I just picked one up last week. Turns out there's a bunch of great games for it. Who knew? The interesting discussion here in relation to scores. First of all, I want to bring up GameSpot's first 10 in a number of years, Bayonetta 2. Chris, you enjoyed this bad boy, right?
I've only scratched the surface with Bayonetta 2, but it's entirely based on Mark Walton's review. I mean, GameSpot's given, I think, 8 10s in its entire 18-year history. So, the guard changes, but the standards stay the same. And for a game to earn a 10 on GameSpot, it has to be phenomenal and just an essential part of the collection for that console, that system that it's on. And Bayonetta is, by all accounts, just an immaculate action game. Just the pacing of the action and the systems and the combat mechanics and how they all flow together so seamlessly, just make it an incredible accomplishment.
And it's a beautiful experience. It's got like these incredible set pieces that are so ornate, and to see this happening,
super bonkers.
Yeah, and to see this running on the Wii U as well as it does is pretty crazy, because it's got a reputation among people who like to argue system wars, like that the Wii U is underpowered. You'd be hard pressed to say that watching this game in action.
And this isn't the kind of game that you typically get on Wii U. This is a much more adult game in some ways. I mean, it doesn't have a ridiculous amount of blood or anything like that, but much more adult than most of the nominees.
It has a lot more butts than Mario
Yeah.
Kart.
And Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, another nominee, and one which...
Well, that's just all butt. Donkey Kong is the one no pants.
It's a game that a lot of vigilant GameSpot users will be like, wait a second, back in February you guys gave this a 6 out of 10. What's it doing on top 5 games of the year?
And most interestingly, it came from the same reviewer that gave Bayonetta a 10.
Yes, interesting. Yeah, Mark Walton, of course, from our UK office. So what is it about DK, and why do we have a game that got 6 out of 10 in our list?
I mean, that's the thing. The same way that some people would give Bayonetta 2 a 10, that same person then isn't here in this room. Like, I wouldn't necessarily score that the same way. And Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is a game that, for a lot of us, is a lot more beloved. That is a game that was, for some of us, 9s and 10s.
Yeah, and I think his biggest problem, Mark Walton, stemmed from the fact that he had a hard time like simply flowing through the levels, as it were, and that sort of prevented him from making progress or having a lot of fun. But this game is hard.
Yeah.
It looks childish, but it is very, very hard. But it's got some really ingenious level design, both from an artistic and a actual functional level. And for me, it's one of my favorite games of the year on the Wii U. I mean, for it to get a 6 was very shocking for me personally.
And you're not the only one. There were a lot of voices clamoring for Tropical Freeze in the discussion, and I think these discussions are what makes GameSpot's Game of the Year awards so special, is because while a review, we always stand by our reviews, and they always reflect the opinion of the reviewer, and they've backed it up well. We are a collection of individuals as well, and so coming together to sort of discuss these games and hash out which ones we think the ones that rise to the top are the best ones.
Yeah, and there's so many great games came out this year, but we're also going to get quite a lot of repetition, and we have our first repeat visitor of the year coming up in the Wii U category. Shovel Knight's back.
Yeah, and the same things that made it wonderful on the 3DS also make it wonderful on Wii U. It's graphically a very similar experience. On the Wii U, you don't have the same Street Pass functionality, of course, but it's still just such an amazing platforming game. In addition to, as Peter mentioned, the different gameplay mechanics that borrow from not just other old school platformers, but modern games like Dark Souls.
And they're mixed really well, too.
And our second repeat visitor of the day, another one we just had from the 3DS, is Super Smash Bros. But fair to say it's a fairly different experience on the Wii U.
The Super Smash Bros. On Wii U not only adds a lot of functionality that we didn't get on the 3DS version, it's a game that is much friendlier on the Wii. On the TV screen, of course. You have a lot more screen real estate. You have a lot more people you can play with. I mean, they up the number of competitors to 8 if you want a really, really insane experience. But this is a game that, traditionally we sit around and we play couch co-op, and you can punch someone in the arm if they're getting the better of you, and just be that kind of physical, real game.
Already 4 fantastic contenders there in our nominees for Best Wii U Game of the Year. And the last one, it wouldn't be a year with a Nintendo console without at least one Mario game making it in there. And Mario Kart 8 is a game that's been popular throughout the office.
Absolutely. I mean, this is this game and Smash Brothers was sort of one of the heated ones. I mean, they were both gonna, make it onto the list, but then when we were sort of debating their merits, I think people who's like, my go-to end of the day in the office game is Smash Brothers. Well, ours is in the UK it's Mario Kart 8. Here it's a little bit Smash. But then we have people defecting on other sides. I mean, this is just this. It's that same kind of formula that has worked so well over the years. But I think the Wii U version thrives in a way that previous Mario Karts. I mean, they keep setting the bar higher and higher.
And Nintendo games are always going to be near the top of the nominee list for a Nintendo console, for the Wii U Game of the Year, because they make such fun, friendly experiences that even maybe if you're not a kart racing fan or a Mario Kart fan, this is an easy game to jump into and learn how to play. The same with Smash Brothers. Even if you're not a fighting game fan, it's a quick, easy to pick up and play game.
Yeah, 5 strong nominees there for Best Wii U Game of the Year, and you can find out who wins GameSpot's Best Wii U Game of the Year 2014 in just a couple of days on December 13th. So make sure you come back. Okay, we're nearly done with you two jokers for a little while. We're going to swap out our editors. But first of all, we've got one more nominee to get through. It's back to the handhelds, but this time Sony's one. Let's check out the nominees for Best Vita Game.
So bravely you wield your blade.
And those are the best video games that came out on the Vita this year. There are 5 nominees for Best Vita Game in GameSpot's 2014 Game of the Year. All right, let's start with the first one on the list, Ollie Ollie.
Yeah.
The hardest move in skateboards, done twice. Why is that on our
GameSpot's
list?
Game of the Month, January.
It was, good point, I forgot about that.
That game is so freaking hard, but that's kind of what makes it great. Like there are hurdles to get over, but they're not insurmountable, right? So you struggle to pull off the moves with the correct timing and keep a string of moves going, right? And that's kind of the basis of succeeding in this game. But once you begin to piece together these little skills, like one after another, you really get into this flow. And it's just, yeah, it's a cute little 2D game, but really, it's a really technical, challenging experience that just gets better as you learn and become a better player.
And you can just do and it's not just about achieving sort of the bar that's set down for you for a given level. You as you get better and more fluid, you try more and you attempt more and you bite it harder, but then you land that super awesome run that just is everything goes smoothly and it's
and your heart's pumping at the end of it, and your wrist
so
is
good.
hurting. But
you have to wipe down your Vita afterwards because your
All that
hands
oil.
are sweaty. Oh man, that's the best.
And like any handheld game, it's something that makes you, once you finish it, you didn't make it quite as far as you wanted. Like, oh, just one more time. Like, maybe I'll make it better next time. But then you do that again, and then again.
Then it's 3 a.m. and you're deep in the suburbs. And how did you get there?
Keeping with that sort of frantic, frenetic pace, Velocity 2X, a game that was popular on PlayStation 4 as well, and of course on the PlayStation Vita.
Yeah, this is a sequel to Velocity.
Really?
But anyway, more importantly, so this game mixes sort of it's some shmup elements and then some side-scrolling action stuff, but it's mostly about, kind of like you said about Ollie Ollie, right? Like doing the best you can as quickly as you can. I was playing this game on the PS4 with my girlfriend the other day. She wasn't playing, but I was, and she was like, I don't know if it's just because I don't know what you're doing or you're doing it really fast, but I cannot keep up with what's happening on the screen. And it's these string of simple maneuvers that you learn, and you sort of go through these levels like teleporting, shooting, defending, and maneuvering as quickly as you can. And it's such an invigorating little experience. And these moments go by so fast, but they're designed really well. And you might miss it, but I think the fact that it works so well is evidence of how good or how well the game is designed.
It's one of those games that seems so completely ridiculously difficult when you're looking, when you first start playing it. Like, it reminded me of when you play Meat Boy for the first time. You're like, how am I supposed to complete these? And then it just becomes this weird sort of second nature type thing.
Yeah.
Changing pace quite dramatically to Child of Light, a great little game, which I wanted to do this entire section in rhyme to see if it would irritate you guys. But
It would.
That's probably the one criticism of that game, is that sort of rhyming structure and the narrative gets a little bit old after
That's
a while.
what bothered me. I think maybe they thought they were really clever when they decided to do that, and they spent a lot of time trying to make it work.
Yeah, I bet it took a lot of writing.
Yeah, but that aside, I think Child of Light works really well on a few levels. Like, one is the combat system, which is sort of reminiscent of Grandia, where you sort of you weigh the using these moves right away to sort of have another move available to you, or whether you defend or counter. And that works really well. And it's got a really nice art style. It's pretty charming, too. And it's sort of unique in the RPG world. It's definitely a European game, but it has a lot of the sort of touches that Japanese RPGs, really successful ones, have had in the past, and brought them to a modern game.
I love that storybook art style. Like, it's something that draws you in and makes it feel like you're watching a children's book, kind of living out in front of you.
That's our third nominee. Our fourth, Freedom Wars. Chris, I remember you hosted a live stream for this bad boy.
So when you're going into E3, a lot of time the big name games, the games that are coming across your plate, but Freedom Wars was one that was not on my radar. And then all of a sudden I'm hosting this demo, and oh my god, this is not only a game with like really interesting combat mechanics, but also a sprawling, like lengthy world. Like this is not an 8-hour experience. This is 40 hours. This is more hours. This is one of those rich, deep experiences that keeps you, keeps that Vita in your pocket, in your backpack for months and months and months. And we had huge fans of this who could speak way more eloquently than I did, and did during our discussions to earn it the nomination. But it's one of these games that like. Even though we all have, you come in with your experience of all the games you've played all year and all the games you've heard of, you come out of that meeting inevitably with a desire to play something new. Yeah. And this is one of those games because the people who were advocating for it were just so convincing. And
another game that I came out of that meeting wanting to play, and it also wins the Daniel Dwyer Most Satisfying Word to Say 2014, is Danganronpa 2.
I mean, we got 2 of these games in the same year. Danganronpa came out earlier in the year, Danganronpa 2. For me, it's hard to decide which one is the one that should be nominated. Of course, we went with the second one because it's closer out. But there's just such a quirky mix of visual novel. It's kind of a continuation in some ways. If you played the 999 or Virtue's Last Reward games, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to love. Or if you love Phoenix Wright and that kind of living out a story, but going on a much more crazy adult, mixing some mini games sort of way. That's what Danganronpa is.
Excellent. Those are our 5 nominees for GameSpot's Game of the Year on PlayStation Vita 2014. The winners for that will be announced on December 14th. So you Vita fans, make sure you check back to GameSpot.com then. All right, we're just about at the halfway stage. Gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out for the first half of our Nominees Awards show. We're going to get Kevin Van Ord and Alexa. I think they're already in the wings. We better get those folks on. We're hitting the big boys at this stage, you could say. We're going to start off with Sony's consoles, then Microsoft's, then onto PC.
So demeaning when you say big boys, Danny. I mean, look at all the awesome games we've already just talked about, dude. I know. That'll fill an entire year of playing awesome games to just hit on all the nominees we've already talked about.
You are... yeah, okay.
Busted.
You should have called me out. I'm just like, I can hear the GameSpot community in my ear, and they're all just like, talk about PlayStation now. So we're going to do it. The nominees for Best PS3 Game are...
No. Tell you what, how about just no shirt at all? Let's try that. Hey, did you guys hear that? Sounded like a chipmunk.
Oh, who's your new friend, Eric?
Shut up, Mom. Not now. This is your chance to end this. Are you ready?
Gotten into trouble.
PS3 ain't done yet, and those are our nominees for GameSpot's Game of the Year on the PlayStation Triple for 2014. Some great games there. I want to start off with a game that's kind of, some people are going to find interesting that it's there because it's kind of not a full game, but it's one that I know the folks who've played it have found it very powerful. The Last of Us Left Behind, Chris.
Yeah, man, this whole full game business. All right, look, this game is DLC. It's an expansion to the Last of Us, and I think a lot of people, rightfully wonder, like, is this a game? I mean, like, what is sort of the definition? But I think it's been pretty clear for a number of years now that the evolution of what is a video game and what is worthy of honoring as a game is just, there's no barriers. It's broken down entirely. They vary in length and price and experience type. And Left Behind is an experience that stands alone unto itself. It stands on the shoulders of The Last of Us from its core mechanics and from some of its characters, But what it does with these two girls, Ellie and Riley, and what it does with the gameplay mechanics, like this photo booth moment, is incredible. And I mean, this is the moment, like, whenever I see this moment, you get a chance at the end of that to post it on your Facebook wall. Whenever I see that, my heart swells because I know that person has been playing Left Behind.
Excellent.
And it was our game of the year in February, and just an incredible experience.
Game of the month, rather.
Yes, game of the month in February. Just an incredible experience that really distilled many of the things that was great about The Last of Us, but then is its entirely own thing. So fantastic.
A little bit of a change of pace then. We're going from that to the winner of the Best Voice Work at the Game Awards, Trey Parker, which he was very happy to beat out Kevin Spacey. I thought that was pretty good.
He was thrilled.
Only in video games will Trey Parker beat Kevin Spacey for acting.
And we got probably the best South Park game ever made.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a couple, but I think what's so great about this one is this one was the love letter to the series. Like, they had everything in it. They had the City Walk guy, and they had just everything.
Every character you could possibly think of.
Every character you could possibly imagine, and then you also got to be one. Like, you got to be part of South Park. And like, stuff like this, like what's being shown right now, is like cute little additions to what is actually a very solid role-playing game. I mean, you have, like, the classes have like so many. Yeah, look at this. This is just hilarious. Who doesn't want to play a video game where you can
X
poop?
to poop.
Where you can poop. But like, you have okay, poop. Like, look, like the combat system was sort of simple, but in that simplicity, they were able to pack in all of like the South Park humor. I think it worked really well. I loved the Jew class. I played as the Jew class. I thought it was awesome. It was a really creative, really sort of like no holds barred spin on the classic role playing game, and just it's funny. That dialogue was funny.
And what I think I love so much about it is that this season of South Park is so clearly got like they're all written about video games.
Yeah.
So clearly while they were making this, they were just spending a lot of time on GameSpot and Kotaku and whatnot, checking all this stuff out. On to our next nominee, Dark Souls 2. Kevin, you've been a massive fan of this series right from the off. What is it about Dark Souls 2 that makes it one of the best games on PlayStation 3 this year?
You know, I think the sense of adventure is the biggest thing. You go off into these great areas, and you have no idea what to expect. There's so much surface area to cover, but even beyond that, every area has such a different feel, and yet it all seems like it's still one part of one big universe. And so that consistency and yet that diversity within that consistency is really great. And of course, you've got great boss battles. You know, just looking at the one that's on the screen right now, that's fantastic. That's one of the best battles in the game. And so you just have, you know, one fun boss battle after another, followed by, you know, great cool areas to explore. And as always, that sort of great Dark Souls-esque storytelling where it's not really about dialogue, and it's not really about characters. It's more about making your own story and more about finding how you fit within this world and trying to see the little pieces that fit into the bigger picture.
And hearing you talk about it, Kevin, it's always the sense of discovery that really thrills me is your passion for that, and the way that, like, you know, a lot of games we see out here, you know, they're awesome, but we kind of knew what to expect going in. And even if that's the case with Dark Souls 2, you knew what to expect going in, but then for them to still be able to capture your imagination, to make that exploration, that discovery so wonderful is incredible.
From one sort of massive sprawling adventure to quite a small one, but one you can play over and over again, Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. I'm going to take the lead on this one because this is one of my favorite games of the year, absolutely. And it kind of took me by surprise because at the start I just thought, oh, this is just like the prologue version of Metal Gear Solid 5 whenever that bothers to come out.
I'll just mess around in this one outpost, I'll get a taste of it, that'll be great.
And like, I had my PS4, and being completely honest, there were not that many games that came out in the first half of the year that really grabbed me. Ground Zeroes was absolutely perfect, exactly what I needed. I pumped hours upon hour onto this game, like playing it over and over again. My first run was horrific. I completed the story and I was like, oh, that's it. And then it presents you with another mode. But it turns out that when you're just doing like the regular standard first mission in it as well, that there are so many different interesting ways to do it. And it reminded me of playing old games like Rainbow Six and Project IGI, where you were basically infiltrating a base, and it wasn't so much like winning it was the interesting thing, it was figuring out all the permutations, messing with the AI, trying new tactics. And Ground Zeroes for me was a game that really sort of encouraged that type of
that active
playfulness.
play, yeah, that's so good.
which is yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing how well that does. And our last nominee, Dragon Age Inquisition, one of the more recent video games to make it onto our nominees list. What is it about Inquisition, Alexa? Do you think makes it one of the best PS3 games of the year?
Well, it's a BioWare game. I hate to be like, oh, it's a BioWare game, but like they just consistently nail that ability to drag the player into caring about your character through all that customization, and then caring about the people around you and the relationships they're in. The party banter in this game, I think, is one of the best things about it. And I know you loved the party banter.
Yeah, I do love the party banner, and what's great is that everybody's experience is going to be different when we go out there onto the battlefield, because I'll have different people than you do, and there's so much specific banter between very specific party members. Like, there are conversations that only two particular people will have because they are the people that they are, and that's really awesome. Like, there are party members that we all love, but the thing is, my party was so different from a lot of other people's, and yet I wouldn't have had it any other way, because they were people that I had grown to really love and care about. People talk about characters that I barely even knew these people.
Awesome. Those are our 5 nominees. I want to briefly mention there's a game that's going to probably come up a couple of times over the next couple of nominees that hasn't made it. Shadow of Mordor. In a word, Alexa, why didn't it make the PlayStation 3 nominees list?
Because its Nemesis system is so scaled down, it's pretty much non-existent on previous gen platforms.
Yeah, so those are our 5 nominations that you can, that we will be choosing from, and of course you can as well in the Players' Choice Awards. We will be announcing our winner on GameSpot.com on December 15th, so make sure you check back then. All right, we continue with our nominees list. PlayStation 3, your old hat. Let's see what the PS4 has to offer. Here are our nominees for Best PlayStation 4 Game of 2015. 14. Eh.
Ah.
Your man-loving excuse of an army at us. Everyone listen! We should be fighting this!
I'm sorry, brother. Anita's a little Dutchy out, Doctor.
Gandhi, John Lennon, Tupac.
For a while, and then Bonneville was hit.
Lights out.
PlayStation 4 Game of the Year. First of all, I want to start with one that's pretty divisive, I feel. I feel the people who are into this game are really into it, and then there's a sort of a large sea of apathy for the folks who haven't engaged with it. And it's that type of game. Destiny, Chris.
Destiny. Yeah, I'm on the thumbs up side for Destiny. I really dig it. I played the first sort of campaign stuff, leveling up stuff during our live stream, right? And so that was a lot of camaraderie. We were 3 of us sitting on the couch for hours just playing, and that was a good time. But what has really cemented Destiny for me as one of my favorite experiences this year is like raiding and week after week, like going back with my same crew of GameSpot folks here, going back, trying that again and again, trying to do better and better, doing strikes together, and like. I haven't really ever gotten into an MMO deep into my life, and I'm not going to say that, there are comparisons to be made, but it's far from an MMO. Still, the fact that I'm coming in every week and Eric Tay is talking to me about like such and such
about
shotgun and like how it has these different properties and where you can get it, and I'm listening with fascinated interest. I'm surprising myself, but I think that's just a testament to the kind of world that Destiny has created that allows people, that makes room for people to get so into it.
There is a big group of folks in the room next to us, including Eric Tay, who did not sleep last night because he was playing The Dark Below, I guess, who are really into Destiny. I sort of wasn't too hot on it. Kevin, you were kind of in the same group as me.
This is one of those points where I think it's worth pointing out that we're not a hive mind
Yes.
at GameSpot.
Yeah.
And because I think you're all crazy. But no, I'm kidding. No, it's it's interesting how everywhere feelings on Destiny are. So I certainly give it credit for being able to pull out really strong feelings.
Yeah, it's going to be
for
interesting
people.
to see when our winner is revealed if it's number one or not. A couple of repeat visitors this time. First of all, Dragon Age Inquisition. Alexa, fantastic game on a bunch of platforms. Same on the PS4.
Yep. Something else we didn't get to mention last time too, like the romance aspects. I know we were watching that video last week of like that one conversation. Like, it's just so beautifully written. It does such a good job of portraying like real human relationships
Or
and emotions.
real fantasy weird alien
Right,
thing relationships.
Should we mention
Kunari. The word is Kunari.
Should we mention the exact thing we're talking about?
The
just real
Iron Bull
quickly?
romance.
So there's you can romance Iron Bull, who's this
Finally.
Big hulking
Kunari
with
guy.
horns, and he's just jacked as heck.
Yeah.
And then so basically, like, there's this great Kunari. You can do like Kunari on Kunari romance, for example. And
Finally.
just like, oh yeah, and like hey, this guy gets a little into S&M,
And he's
as
really
it turns out.
smirky. It's
Great.
just like, oh, it's perfect.
It's just adorable and
that's-
funny and
mature
Gross.
and like
and mature.
gross and
Yeah.
emotional.
And mature.
all
and
at
honestly,
once.
a little uncomfortable to be watching it with your coworkers because it's pretty hot.
Yeah, all right, there you go.
It is
Video
pretty
Games
hot.
2014. You get magical beasts boning each other. You can also, if you want, have your friend in a sort of a one-person gyrocopter type thing, and then hook yourself onto it and fly around and shoot elephants. Far Cry 4.
Oh,
one
I
of the
think we're
best.
still talking
Yeah.
about boning.
I mean, there's no boning. There's no boning in Far Cry 4.
There isn't,
Or
but there's a hell of
is
a
there?
lot of
mean, I saw some tigers
Ubisoft
fighting.
gameplay. Lots of taking over bases, lots of radio towers. It's fair to say it's very similar to Far Cry 3. As it turns out, I don't really care. We didn't really care. It's a great game.
You get the wingsuit early on, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
this whole area is just your playground. I mean, yeah, especially cruising around in the gyrocopter. The mobility stuff allows you to like just lean way more into that open world freedom and mayhem that the Far Cry series does so well, and it's gorgeous.
Also, the story is pretty great. I actually, gave a crap about these people fighting for the Golden Path, and AJ. His story is super interesting.
Ajay.
Paganman, Ajay Gale, and Paganman is just a super charismatic, awesome. You just love to hate him.
Yeah, it's a shame he wasn't in it a little bit more, but then I guess you
Yeah.
can't have everything. Great open world game, but not the only great open world game we have on our list of best PlayStation 4 games of the year,
Yes,
and this
sir.
is the first time we're going to see the mention of Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah, that Nemesis system. Like, there's no other game out there in which you can very personally craft like your own ultimate enemy. Like, there's so much going on there, and all of these orcs that you encounter have, a different name, different set of abilities, different set of weaknesses. So you have to go into attacking them differently. And the way that they're set up, the hierarchy of their military, you can either infiltrate it stealthily from the bottom, or just go take out everyone from the top, or you can brand them, which means you take control of them and then send them in to do your bidding for you. It's crazy. You're essentially I don't want to call it like a
One-person army?
one-person army
Yeah.
in Mordor. And also, it just looks great. It's super fun. The combat is super satisfying. Like, you are kind of weak in the beginning, but the game does a good job of making you want to get better. And by the end, you have these firefights with like 20 orcs, and you're flipping around, popping heads and stabbing them, and it just makes you feel powerful.
I remember, Kevin, you said it was the system that you think will be copied the most in 2015. We always see that every year. There's like one mechanic that you kind of think and maybe hope that a lot of other games will adopt it as well.
Yeah, I would say that the Nemesis system is probably the one most likely to be looked at and not necessarily copied, but be an inspiration for other games. Yeah.
4 big games there. Our 5th nominee is quite a small one made here actually right in the Bay Area.
Correction, it is Supergiant.
Is it? Good point. It is Supergiant.
Supergiant.
GameSpot's
Hey, now.
own Greg Kasavin, of course. Transistor, wonderful game. One of my top 2 games of the year. I still haven't figured out if it's number 1 yet for me personally, but a wonderful game. For anyone who's played Bastion, you kind of have a little bit of an idea of what to expect, but then it totally flips it on its head when you actually start to play it.
I mean, it's sort of in the kind of the artistic style, and not the artistry, I guess, behind it. Not the art style, because it's different than Bastion. It's a different world. It's a technological world. It's this kind of noir Art Deco hybrid thing. But the artistry there, and also to me, one of the things that really drew me in was the mystery. Like, this is a strange place, and they're giving me bits, but they're also doing that thing that I love in fiction, where they give you information, treating you like you know this world and know it already.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's enough to for you to start to construct the structure behind it, and so that always draws me in.
And how about that soundtrack?
Oof. Yes, yeah, good point as well.
Just gotta point it out.
Worth mentioning.
And the dedicated sing button.
Oh yeah, good point.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
My
forget the Nemesis
favorite
system.
thing.
That's the one
Sing
mechanic
button.
that we're going to see in 2015 all
Press
video
to
games.
hum.
So those are our 5 nominations for PlayStation 4 Game of the Year right here on GameSpot.com. So make sure you check back December 15th when we'll be announcing both the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 winners right here on GameSpot.com. Okay, that's Sony out of the way, folks. Next, we move on to Microsoft's consoles. Let's first check out with the one that ain't dead just yet, the Xbox 360. Let's see our nominees.
Roger that, all flights, initiate jump sequence.
Yay, the bishop's balls! Now religion won't interfere with government.
Come at me. Try and fart on me. Come on.
You are becoming quite proficient at this. Let's hope it works on the big one. I hope so.
Breathing stable.
And those are our nominees for Best Xbox 360 Game on GameSpot's Game of the Year Awards 2014. Let's start with a new one. Let's start with the Microsoft exclusive.
Titanfall!
Titanfall, yeah.
Titanfall.
Game that came out, seems like ages ago now. Like
March.
Back in Q1. It was a game that people were sort of craving for months and months, and didn't disappoint.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I was really looking forward to it as a big competitive shooter fan. And yeah, God, that parkour system, that wall running system, it just, to me, it felt so fresh. And in the very populated competitive multiplayer landscape, to be able to not only have your player mobility fundamentally altered by being able to wall run, by being able to double jump, and by being encouraged to string all these things together, and you have to do that unless you want to be a sitting duck, to have that, which would have been like an entirely great game on its own, but you also have Titans. You also call those in, and they're all on the same battlefield, and I think the achievement in balancing those things, in creating spaces where both pilots and Titans can feel like they're powerful on the battlefield, and it's just makes each match feel so cool. And then one of my favorite things, the evacuation at the end of the match. Like, the match is decided, you know if you won or you lost, but there's still that rush to get to the dropship. There's still that last hurrah that really puts an exclamation point on the end of a competitive multiplayer match in such a clever way. I wouldn't be surprised if that also makes the list of things we see imitated in the future.
Absolutely. It was one of those games, like you said, few and far between do you get a first-person competitive game that really actually makes you think differently about the way you approach combat. So yeah, for me as well, Titanfall was a fantastic addition to the world of first-person competitive games.
But pretty interesting that it was one of the only sort of exclusives that we've talked about so far. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we are honoring with our nominees thus far is multi-platform. It was a huge year for multi-platform games.
Completely, and the next 4 games we're going to talk about have all been mentioned already in our nominees today. First of all, let's talk about Dark Souls 2 again.
Yeah,
good experience on a previous gen console as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, a lot of people
only to this point, actually.
Yeah, only to this point. We'll get
Soon.
more, and hopefully that means that that lighting model that people craved will appear that we didn't see in the first one. But even so, I still think Dark Souls 2 is really great. I think it's hard to beat what I consider to be possibly the best game of its time, which is Dark Souls. But I'd say they got real close. and it's just a fantastic game. I love the way it feels, the heft, and just enough little tweaks here and there in a brand new world to make it seem really fresh.
And the controller stuff worked right off the bat on this one as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. Everything just feels right, but just the little things were there to make it feel different and unique, so it could stand on its own rather than have to be, just it's just a sequel. It's just another Dark Souls. Well, actually, no. It has a significant enough feel, difference to it that it really does. Stand on its own as a fantastic game.
On the other end of the RPG scale, we're going back to South Park for the Stick of Truth, Alexa.
Yay! I mean, I just keep going back to it's a good RPG. We have had so few good RPGs, obviously Dragon Age aside, which I guess we'll get back to. But there have been so few very well done Western ones, and I think this made a very great use of a kind of silly property and turned it into like a serious, game with a lot of strategy.
Definitely
also,
serious.
It's just funny.
You're talking to a poo.
Yeah,
well, no, they did a really good job fitting fitting the South Park universe into the RPG framework.
Yeah, one of the sort of debates we had downstairs was, if you weren't a South Park fan, could you enjoy this game? Because the combat stuff is pretty light in comparison to a lot of other role-playing games. Chris, what did you think about it in terms of...
What?
I think the most telling thing for me was that this is a game that people in the office would go home, they would play, and they'd come back the next morning all talking about and all having their different anecdote about like this hilarious scene, that hilarious scene. They'd try to find a gameplay clip of it to show off, or they'd be just like reenacting it in the office. I think that passion for just like that kind of humor, that getting that kind of response that it's still filling you with glee the morning after is it's really special.
Fantastic game. Then going back to another game we've heard a bunch about today, Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. One of my favorite games on PlayStation 4. There were some thoughts and concerns in our debate downstairs about the draw distance issues on the previous gen consoles, but that didn't stop it from getting nominated on both PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 Game of the Year awards. Still a fantastic game, like everything that's essentially in the current gen version is in this one as well, and it's great to see that Snake kind of made a home on PlayStation for so long, so it's interesting always to see him pop up on the Xbox 360.
Yeah, he was all over the place, man.
Crazy.
Tracy.
Our last nominee for the Xbox 360, one we've talked about a bunch already, but let's talk about it again. Dragon Age Inquisition. Kevin, you're a big fan of this bad boy.
I do love Dragon Age. And I think it's worth pointing out, too, that one of my favorite things about Dragon Age Inquisition is how well it takes sort of the personal storytelling that you yourself craft in a large world that you explore and combines it with that more traditional BioWare storytelling where you follow conversation paths and make a linear story of your own, but then you're also making the adventure story of your own. And this is the first time I think any game's really gotten good at combining both of those things without making one or the other feel like it got the short end of the stick. And I think that's really impressive.
Excellent. Well, those are our 5 nominees for Best Xbox 360 Game on this GameSpot's 2014 Game of the Year Awards. Make sure you check back on December 16th, where we'll be announcing the winners of this and, of course, the Xbox One winner as well. Check out those nominees for Best Xbox One Video Game of the Year. Roll it!
I'm just so tired of hiding here, Talion.
Are you working for that traitorous captain? Is he working for you?
Great year for the Xbox One and some fantastic games. Those are our 5 nominees for Best Xbox One Video Game of the Year 2014. Let's first of all start with Shadow of Mordor. We can talk a lot about the Nemesis system, it comes up a lot, but outside of that sort of wonderfully unique mechanic, Mordor is a solid game, and it builds on like builds on the foundations of a bunch of other great games too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's hard to escape the shadow of Assassin's Creed when you play Shadow of Mordor. But what's really interesting to me about that? I made a joke. What's really interesting about that to me? It's the best Assassin's Creed game that came out in 2014.
Yes.
And but I gotta say, it does it not. It builds on it in just interesting ways. And one of my favorites is that it makes the game a challenge, particularly early on. You can't just fight your way out of 20,000 orcs descending upon you. That one touch alone makes all the difference, because what it does is it infuses meaning into every mechanic that you don't have to think about in similar games.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it's not just about having lots of choices, it's about having lots of meaningful choices. And that one look at making it a challenge makes all the difference in the world. Make it a challenge and suddenly all the mechanics have new meaning they never had before.
I felt like I was like a horse in Red Dead Redemption when I played that game, and it was like, took me a long time of like, just, I can kill everyone, die, and then it broke me, and then I was like, oh, okay.
Another game you really enjoyed this year as well was Dragon Age Inquisition.
Oh yeah, speaking of horses, exploration in that game is just so interesting. I mean, it's not, it's not your Skyrim sprawling open world, go wherever you want all the time, but like you have these areas like the hinterlands we're seeing here that are just so rich with things to do and with sights to see, and they're big enough that you have that moment that this is the bar that I measure any sort of open world exploration by. It's like, I see a cool thing way off in the distance. Can I go to that cool thing and find cool things there and find cool things on the way? Yes?
Yeah.
All right, this is awesome. I am way in on it.
Interesting year for the Xbox One. What we're seeing on our nominees here is that not a lot of exclusives being mentioned here. You could call it a platform exclusive or at least a Microsoft exclusive, but for sure Titanfall was one of the best games that came out on the Xbox One.
Yeah, and it was really one of those standouts that had some exclusivity to it. And it
wasn't available on PlayStation. Put it that
pretty
way.
much that, or Wii U, right? But no, I mean this is a game that tried something new in the campaign way, because it was like, listen, we are setting out to make a multiplayer shooter. We're going to throw in a campaign experience. And I don't think the campaign experience was super good, but then again, it was just a bunch of multiplayer matches. The multiplayer action in the game is great. So it's just, playing this game multiplayer is unlike playing any other game multiplayer. I mean, the speed you can compare to Call of Duty, the mobility you could compare to Brink. Kind of.
How flattering. How deeply flattering.
To like the idea behind it, but the execution here and the sheer options of what you can do with that mobility, with your sort of combat positioning, just makes it this evergreen experience.
And what I loved about it was it reminded me of the early Xbox 360 games, where every now and again you got that one game, like sort of Gears of War, where everyone got it. And the week that came out, everyone who had an Xbox One was playing Titanfall, and everyone in the office was clambering. Those who hadn't gotten an Xbox One were clambering to the stores to get it. And I think that's the one thing that I'm looking forward to next year as much as possible. And there hasn't been too many games this year on Xbox One that have actually done that. Titanfall was absolutely one of them. Another game which is not a exclusive on the Xbox One that is mentioned in our top 5 games of the year is once again Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes. Have any of you folks played it? I feel like I've been talking about Ground Zeroes all day today.
But you're so eloquent.
I know, you just nail it.
I love it. Again, I thought it was maybe, it's going to be like a prologue version to Metal Gear Solid 5, but it turns out it's not just like a demo, or it's not just a truncated version, or it's not a game that you can play in an hour and complete it and be done with it. You can if you want to, but to do that would be like playing the first chapter of any game and then stop and playing. For me, Ground Zeroes was a really enjoyable experience. It's one that I piled hours upon hours, probably 24 hours into in total. It looks fantastic. It showed off the new next-gen hardware really well. And apart from it being just a wonderful taste of what's to come with Metal Gear Solid 5, I think it's a wonderful standout game. And it's a game that I would actually recommend to people who don't necessarily play Metal Gear Solid games, which you couldn't say for a lot of other sort of deep franchise titles.
And you're the one talking about it a lot on this set here, Danny, but during our discussions, I mean, there were over a dozen people down there at any given time, and a lot of them were also sharing their stories about this mission or that mission, or about how this challenge or that challenge sort of just like invigorated them and made them think this game was just such a great sandbox and such an excellent experience.
It's worth mentioning that there are 4 of us sitting here in this room talking about these games, but when we were downstairs there was something close to 20 odd, I think.
Yeah.
So a lot of thought and time went into these nominee lists. And our final one for Xbox One is a game we've heard a bunch about today, and a wonderful game on a bunch of platforms, but it definitely also stood out on the Xbox One. Far Cry 4. Pagan Min!
Amazing. There's just so much.
Ajay Gande.
AJ Gale.
AJ Gale.
AJ Gande.
They say it both ways, don't they?
Do they?
Yeah, because he says his American way, and then they come in with his regional way. It's pretty good. Yeah, a fun game, absolutely loads to do. What do you think it was about this game that sort of made it so entertaining, considering it's using a formula that we've seen Ubisoft use a lot this year, and worth mentioning, there's no sign so far of either Watch Dogs or AC Unity on this list.
You can set a tiger on fire and then send it into battle.
You can get on an elephant and ride it into battle, and control it like a Jeep.
Yeah.
Like a Jeep. Yep. Also, the map editor is actually really robust and a lot of fun. I know we played on this show with Mary a couple weeks back where we had the bear explosion and stuff like that. And people get so creative with it. It's pretty solid.
Yeah, and a great shooter to boot as well. I think for me, the guns in it, the AI is not necessarily the most complex thing, but it really plays into the sort of fun, open nature of that game. It's a game that a lot of us are still playing and still trying to complete at the moment and still enjoying.
Also, wingsuit.
And it just straight up gives you a wingsuit right from the off.
Please give me more wingsuits in video games. Thank you very much.
Wingsuit is the game of the year.
Sincerely, Chris Waters.
Those are our 5 nominees for Best Xbox One Video Game of the Year, and we will be revealing the winner of that, as well as the winner of the Xbox 360 on December 16th, right here on GameSpot.com, so make sure you check back then. All right, that's all the consoles out of the way, folks. We've got 2 more left. Our Game of the Year nominee discussion will be coming up pretty soon, but first of all, PC, where the real video games are at. Roll the nominees.
Tell me, where is your maker now?
You could forget all that. And just have fun!
Who you want to kill?
That's the Knight's tomb beneath here.
In Red Creek Valley, the secrets grew like spider webs, and Ethan Carter disturbed one he shouldn't have.
And those are the nominees for Best Personal Computerized Video Game on GameSpot's Best Game of the Year 2014. A bunch of games there which have not come out on other platforms, some which have as well. But let's start with a game that you could argue could only really come out on the PC, Divinity Original Sin. Kevin, you're a big fan of this, by the way.
Yeah, I love Divinity Original Sin. It's sort of a return to form for a series that had languished a little bit, I would say. Divinity 2 was not awesome. But then Divinity Original Sin comes back and recaptures the spirit of the old Divinity games like Divine Divinity and Beyond Divinity. But what makes it special is not that it looks back to the past, but how forward-looking it actually is. I love the combat that uses elements in very unique and different ways and makes you have to think about every move. And actually that kind of idea that you have to think about everything you do exists outside of battle as well. You have to be very careful when you're just wandering around the world, what you click on, what you choose to do, who you choose to piss off, because that can have consequences. And even though you might not expect some of those consequences, they all make sense within the context of the world. Once you think about what happened, it's like, oh yeah, I probably could have thought of that.
This brings up a sort of an interesting point I always find in our Game of the Year discussions at the end of the year, is that some games a lot of people have played because they're, say, relatively short or relatively accessible. With a game like Divinity, you kind of have to put in quite a lot of time to understand its essence or to really appreciate it.
Right.
Can you kind of speak to that a little bit, like during our discussions, how important it is to sort of, I guess, listen to people who have put in the time to play the games that maybe not a large amount of people have played?
Oh, totally. I actually had the help of the overseas offices as well, where, you know, because folks in the UK and in Australia had actually played more than I think we did in the US at large. Luckily, I finished Divinity, and sometimes you do have to put your trust in the people that you work with and put forward a passionate argument, explain why this is truly special. And this is one of those cases, I think, where it might not have been the most played game amongst all of us, but I think that it needed to be recognized, and it's when you have a game like that that you say, everybody, pipe down. I'm going to stand up and make my impassioned plea.
Yeah, and an interesting aspect that maybe people aren't aware of is that when we do our Game of the Year discussions, our officers from the UK and Australia, as long as it's not 2 in the morning, will be calling in as well, listening and debating along with us. A game which those offices, as well as right here in the US, talked a lot about, and again, we've already seen come up in our mobile character, is Hearthstone. Fantastically popular video game, which technically came out this year and has, well, we saw it at BlizzCon as like taken the world by storm.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I am one of the most rudimentary Hearthstone neophytes in the office, but I mean, hearing people talk about this game for months and months, I finally sat down out on my porch, had my laptop, and like played Hearthstone until like the sun had set, and I was starting, like my body was cold and I was uncomfortable, but I was still playing. I was like, oh, I've endangered my physical well-being because of this game. There must be something going on here. It's just, I mean, immediately from the get-go, I was in these satisfying matches. I was in these tense matches, and I mean, they look nothing like the epic sort of clashes that you see when Justin Haywald or Ed Tran is playing these games. But nonetheless, still satisfying, still engaging, and still so cool. And
what I love about it is that there is that kind of hardcore engagement, but also Cynthia Weir's daughter, Vivian, is walking around the office today at the tender age of 5, and even she's enjoyed a bit of Hearthstone over the past couple of months. Let's crack on to some more, I guess, traditional PC games, or I'm not even sure if they are anymore. The lines between console and PC experiences are blurred to the point where 2 games which have come up quite a lot on our nominees for the consoles have also appeared here. Let's first talk about Dragon Age Inquisition. Which one of you guys wants to take up the mantle on this one?
Oh man, that game is so good.
It's just amazing. It's just good. It's just good.
I say it
really
because
is.
everyone had a voice in the discussion for both these games, I'd say.
It really is.
It's beautiful. Like, look at it. This is like, you really feel like you're there.
The diversity of the environments, I mean, that it's just, you know, I talked in our previous discussion about how exploration is so rewarding, but it's also just, it's one of these games that I can go into, and I know that there's a grand story to pursue, and I know that there's a showdown waiting for me, but I also know that there are these vast lands I can explore and discover all these little things. And you know, I'm not always in the mood to like take on some serious discussions with these people, with these characters that I'm actually like pretty emotionally invested in. Sometimes I just want to like go for a romp in the countryside and discover some weird crap. And that's one of the great pleasures for me for Dragon Age Inquisition.
And a game that you can explore quite a lot of as well, of course, one we've talked about a lot today and people have been talking about a lot since it came out. Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor, one of my favorite games to play on the console, but pretty fantastic on PC as well.
No, I know the PC version has that very special high-res pack or whatever that just makes it look beautiful. It's like you're looking at a movie. So I would say, I don't know, I think the PC is the best looking version, but like...
And outside of the visuals as well, just a fantastic game top to bottom, Gavin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, you have no excuse as long as you have one of the main platforms. There's at least some kind of Shadow of Mordor you get to play. And what's great about this is that you know, the PC version gets the better looks. It gets you know, a better frame rate in the deal. Like it really is one of those, well, you know, ha 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 master race things where it's like, everybody thinks of this as a console game, but man, you just plug in a controller on your PC and go, and you get the best version of the game right there.
One of the benefits of being a PC gamer. Another one is that you get to play a lot of games which are not available on consoles. You've already talked about Divinity, but a wonderful game that I feel we didn't really know too much about. And then I was looking over Sean McInnes's shoulder months ago before he went on, left GameSpot and went on to grander things, and he was playing this game that he spoke. He wanted to tell us about how great this game was, and he wasn't wrong. The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, a fantastic game on PC.
God, he really pushed us to make sure we played this and knew it and understood it,
knowing that he wouldn't be here for the deliberations.
And everybody's like, Vanishing of who? and then I play, and then suddenly it's like, oh, this is really special. And it's one of those games where somebody says something like walking simulator, and I want to punch them. Apparently, that's because violent video games have taught me to want to punch people that I disagree with. But this is the kind of video game that teaches you that there are mysteries out there and things that you don't understand, and it's the kind of video game that truly is special, and piecing together the history of this place, and the way the gameplay and the investigation ties into that is just really, really special.
Some wonderful games there on the personal computer. So to find out who wins GameSpot's Game of the Year on PC, make sure to check back December 17th where we'll be announcing the winner. All right, and that wraps up our platform winners for 2014. All that's left to do.
Nominees, at least.
Or sorry, nominees rather. No, all those game one. We're giving away like 40 Game of the Year things. It's just like, make it a rain awards.
Baby.
The big one.
Baby.
Is still to come up. Interesting thing to make note, which we'll talk about in a second in a bit more detail, is that we do not have a nominees list for Game of the Year. All games are eligible. We have our Game of the Month games that won. We have a bunch of other games that people want to shout for. So we have Mary Kish has created this montage of some of the games which are eligible for our Game of the Year award. Let's check it out. Just some of the possible winners for this year's GameSpot 2014 Game of the Year. As I said, all games that are released this year are eligible. We had a lengthy discussion talking about who our platform winners were, who our Game of the Month winners were, a free-for-all. I'm looking forward to seeing who comes out the winner. We won't be announcing the winner for a week and a half, but right off the bat, some fantastic games that came out this year. Let's go back to earlier in the year, Bayonetta 2, a game that got 10 out of 10 on GameSpot. The first 10 out of 10 in a number of years, and the highest reviewed or highest scored game on GameSpot.com this year. Kevin, what is it about Bayonetta 2 do you think makes it eligible for a possible Game of the Year?
That game is so good is what makes it eligible. It's just, I would say that from a mechanical perspective, it is probably the most mechanically perfect action game to ever be made.
You said the P word?
I did. I do think there's, except for the fact that I wish it was a little harder the first time through on normal difficulty. That's the only real gameplay problem I had with it. I just think this game is exquisite in every way, and playing it means having a giant grin on your face from beginning to end. I finished it in a night. It was just a 7-hour stretch where I started and finished it, and I never stopped laughing and smiling. I just loved this game.
Let's keep it on the Wii U. Let's talk about a game that a lot of people have enjoyed this year. Maybe not so fervently, but it has a sort of a mass appeal to it. Mario Kart 8. It's a game that I've been playing a lot in my bed this week since I got a Wii U last week and have realized the wonders of just sitting in your bed with the gamepad and then realizing it's 3 in the morning.
I was going to say, people do get pretty passionate about Mario Kart 8, but then you brought up this whole bed thing, and I don't know, it probably still holds true. I mean, you like, again, you hear Kevin talk about Bayonetta and having a smile on your face. I feel like if you don't have a smile on your face in Mario Kart, you're just enraged because someone has just like shelled you or done something, and like beneath that rage, is a smile because the games are. This game is so fun. The track design is so good, and it feels so good to play. It's one of these games that just feels great.
I want to give a shout out to another game which a bunch of people in the office are determined that it is at least their favorite game of 2014. Whether or not it is GameSpot's, we'll just have to wait and see. The Dark Below, it's just come out. Half the office is back playing Destiny.
Destiny! You want to talk about contentious conversations that we have during the discussion. I mean, look at Van Orr shaking his head right here.
No.
And then we have people going to bat because they have played it literally like every week, almost every day since it came out, and just are so into the grind, into the PvP, into the PvE, into the raid, into the gear, into like their alt characters, into this world. And there are some legit shots you can take at Destiny for sure, but that hasn't stopped it from remaining such a highlight of the year for so many.
A fantastic game, divisive, and I think it'll be very interesting to see where that comes up. I see Kevin just giggling to himself here.
Close up of Kevin shaking his head.
Muttering 6.0 under his breath.
Let's talk about a game actually that maybe you weren't too hot on as well, that some other folks were, which was Far Cry 4, another game which could possibly win this year's Game
but
of
the thing
the
is,
Year.
I totally get it. Like, I mean, even with Destiny, I totally get it. That's the thing. I might shake my head, but I do get it. And with Far Cry, I get it as well. It's just such a great, that Ubisoft formula that they've really honed for the open world. I mean, it's easy to roll our eyes, and I do often, about the Ubisoft formula, but when it comes down to it, it works because it keeps you chasing one activity over the other. And in the times in between the things that you chase is actually where the adventure happens, if that makes sense. And so you might be chasing a little dot on a map, but actually what you're doing is you're just mapping a route from here to there, knowing that the cool stuff is what happens in between.
I want to have a quick little thought as well about some games that haven't been mentioned in our nominees list, but are still eligible. Two of the other Ubisoft games that came out this year that used that system. Kevin, would you like to speak to Assassin's Creed Unity and Watch Dogs? Do you think they could possibly be Game of the Year winners this year?
I mean, you never know. I actually really liked Watch Dogs. Alexis doesn't like Watch Dogs as much.
Talk about divisive.
But I actually liked Watch Dogs in part because even though its story wasn't that great, some of its themes really spoke to me. Themes of people
hacking
walking
people's.
Around. No, it was more about the idea of people so invested in this life, looking at their phone, that they forgot to be invested in this life. That's the part that really spoke to me, and I actually think that's a theme. What are you doing?
That's cool.
What?
Cool story, Kev.
Oh, look.
Yeah.
Why are we giving the winner to Crossy Road? What's going on?
Crossy Road. Can we talk about
No, we
Crossy
can't
Road?
talk about Crossy Road.
No.
Yes, we can talk about
It's
Crossy
so
Road.
good.
We've got a mobile category. It's a mobile
so
game.
good.
That's true. Crossy Road is technically eligible.
You can play as a pigeon that poops as it walks.
So wait, this is just Flappy Bird, only you're a road?
You can play as a
I don't-
pigeon that can poop in GTA 5 as well.
You can.
The reissue.
All you need to do is take drugs.
Or you can play
Digital
as
drugs.
a human that poops while they walk.
I don't think you
No?
need it on
Okay.
GTA. A game
that's real life.
In the
That's
world,
real life.
lots of great open world games did come out this year, of course. One of the ones that I think took a lot of people by surprise a couple of months ago was Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor. Alexa, you've been playing a lot of this game.
I've played the heck out of that game. It's just so big, and like you don't have to. Like I spent maybe the first 6 or 7 hours of my playthrough not playing any story missions. I just wanted to go after those Uruks, and I just wanted to take them down. And the game does a really good job of making you care about all of that side stuff, because that side stuff just makes you more powerful. You can unlock runes for your sword, make your sword more powerful, it'll make you more powerful. And then you're, uber powerful, and then you can go take on these war chiefs.
Let's keep it real. The reason you actually went around and did all that stuff is because you were tired of orcs mouthing off to you, and you just wanted to kill them all.
Perhaps. I don't know. We can talk about that for a second, too. Like, I think that these enemies are all very smartly written, too. Some of the dialogue's really funny.
Yeah,
all these orcs have different personalities.
And having somebody, an orc that you thought you had killed a couple of hours earlier come up with a big metal plate on his head, screaming at you, calling out exactly what happened is something
that was a really good touch.
Yeah, it's I think the thing about Mordor is that you sort of forget when you're playing it just how more interesting it is than most third-person action games. The things that it nails, it gets combat, it gets exploration, the side quests are interesting, the Nemesis system, of course, is fantastic. But there haven't been that many third-person action games that have really been that interesting. One game, for instance, that we haven't seen come up in our nominees yet, which is also still eligible, of course, is Infamous Second Son. That's a game when you put that up against Mordor, you sort of you realize, wow, Mordor actually does quite a lot very well. And another game that does in a sort of traditional genre, as it were, is Dragon Age Inquisition.
Yeah, you want to talk about like enemies having personality in Mordor and then giving the world personality. Dragon Age Inquisition is, you know, as a BioWare game, it's the personalities of your party members that really, I think, draws me into this. And the sheer, like, this is the game where every mission for me is like almost like a Sophie's Choice of like, you're really cool. I want to take you, you're really cool. I want to hear what you have to say to this person, so I want to take you as a pair, but I only can bring 3 people at a time. Like, but just I spend, you know, as much time out exploring the world as wandering around Haven, striking up conversations with these people because their personality is such an interesting part of the game and is such a rewarding aspect to explore.
Speaking of difficult decisions, another fantastic role-playing game that came out on PC, but from a different perspective, Divinity Original Sin.
Oh yeah.
You're a big fan of this one, Kevin.
Yeah, I am. And again, I think that we can talk about BioWare games in which the decisions sort of come down to story branches, or a game like Divinity where the decisions come down to just... It's very procedural in this case, and so what you do, it's not just a matter of do I try to talk or do I try to fight. You try to talk. What kind of talking are you going to do? I mean, it really comes down to stuff like that. And if you decide to fight, you might miss out on completely new quests because of that alone. You know, there's things like, hey, you can talk to animals, but you may not know that if you don't have the right skill for it. So there's all sorts of stuff that you may never see simply because you make choices, and sometimes you don't even know that it's really a choice.
Fantastic game that is only available on the PC. I want to talk a little bit about some of the exclusives that came out. First of all, on the Xbox One, you could have games like Titanfall, which we've talked about, but Sunset Overdrive was a pretty interesting game when it came out a couple of months ago as well. I know folks who were playing it, you know, initial feedback from our reviewers was not great. It was like, this game seems like it's not that fun to explore. But once you got past that 2-hour hump, that game gets pretty fantastic.
Yeah, nothing else looks like it too. I mean, you're flipping around, everything is so colorful, and like that sort of aesthetic of like it's the end of the world but everything's crazy, I think works really well for that style of gameplay.
And you talked about, Danny, about Titanfall, you mentioned briefly. Obviously, that's a competitive multiplayer stand-up, but we also had Call of Duty Advanced Warfare this year doing a lot of cool stuff with mobility in their competitive multiplayer suite. Kevin looks
single
like...
player. But talk about single player. Wolfenstein.
Yeah.
You know,
who would have thought that game would be as good as it was?
And you know what? I have tons of people in my Twitter feed clearly trying to tell me that Wolfenstein is the best shooter of 2014. And you know, they might be right.
Yeah, that's not a bad shout. It's right. One of the games that I actually thought was one of the best shooters of the year was Grand Theft Auto 5, weirdly enough. Who saw that one coming, first person? But yeah, of course, you know, we've talked a lot about big games here. The small games, of course, are eligible as well. Games like, for instance, we're all talking about our sort of personal top 5s. I know I've definitely got Transistor in there, as well as Cannon Brawl, which was a great PC game that came out earlier this year as well. But one of the games that a lot of the office has been playing is Hearthstone.
Oh yeah, tons of Hearthstone players, and I think the biggest argument when we talked about Hearthstone in terms of its nomination was, where do we play it more, on the PC or on mobile?
Yeah, right.
You know, and it ended up making the nominee list for both because the voices were so loud in favor of that game because it's so clever, it's so engrossing, and it's just there's the strategy ceiling on it is so high. You can be into this game for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah. Some fantastic games there. Is there anything else that's peeking out at you guys we haven't mentioned in this discussion?
A shout out, I think, to Telltale.
Of course, so many games this year.
Because not only is The Wolf Among Us on my personal, it's one of my personal top 10 games of the year.
It's in our nominee for Best Mobile as well.
Yeah, but we've also had great things like Tales from the Borderlands. Who would have thought that the best Borderlands game would be the one that Telltale made?
Right.
And the Game of Thrones first episode just came out.
And of course, Walking Dead Season 2 has been clipping along this year as well. Yeah.
Like Telltale, you do what you do. You keep doing it because we're eating it up.
Yeah, we have the reason why we didn't put up the video of all the nominees, or the reason why we're not talking about them all here today, is because there are simply too many of them. 2014 has been a great year for video games, and we are very close to announcing GameSpot's Game of the Year for this year. In fact, it'll be next Thursday, December 18th, live, 2 p.m. Pacific, right here in the lobby, where we'll be unveiling, conversing, first of all, about the possible winners we think should have won, and then unveiling GameSpot's Game of the Year 2014. So make sure you put that on your calendar. 2 p.m. Pacific, right here on GameSpot.com, next Thursday, December 18th. We'll see you there. All right, so that was our chat about all of the platform awards, Game of the Year awards. It's just before we get on to wrapping up the show, what do you think about the year that was 2014, I guess? Was it needed to be a good year because we'd basically gotten 2 new consoles, and we were sort of craving software for them.
But what was interesting about the year of a new console is that console exclusives were not the dominant story throughout the entire year. It was so, like, looking at our nominee list and in our discussions, you know, we talked about the Titanfalls, we talked about Infamous, we talked about Sunset Overdrive, all the exclusive, and it ended up being the Mordors, the Inquisitions, the Metal Gear Solid, Ground Zeroes that sort of rose to the top above those across all platforms. So it's just kind of a great year to own any console.
Yeah.
We've had a bunch of discussion here today, but the discussion's not over. We're harking back to GameSpot of old with an interesting discussion in just a couple of minutes. But first of all, we're going to check out a new trailer, because there's still trailers coming out.
What?
I know, yeah. This December's not over, 2014 ain't over. So before, we're going to come back in a couple of minutes. But first of all, let's check out this new trailer for Dying Light.
Dying.
The eyes of the world have been glued to the city of Haran for the past 2 months, following the outbreak of a previously unknown pathogen.
It is not yet clear what has caused this gruesome affliction. The local government's Ministry of Defense erected a quarantine wall shortly after the outbreak.
The global relief effort's steady stream of supply drops has sustained what few survivors remain in the city. The Ministry of Defense believes more radical action should be taken to stem the tide of this virus.
The question is, are there still non-infected survivors in the city as the GRE maintains? And if so, will the ministry still go through with a stated plan to annihilate the city in an attempt to wipe out the Haran virus once and for all?
Whether by way of the virus or the ministry's proposed plan, one thing is certain. Haran's days are numbered.
'14, wonderful year for video games, and of course it's been an honor to host and talk to all you wonderful people about all of the best games that came out this year and the nominees. I want to give a special shout out to our friends at Airheads, who have sponsored this year's Game of the Year nominee discussions, and they wanted to do something special at the end of this show, so I didn't want to impact on our normal discussions and sort of, exactly. See, that is exactly what would happen. There would be chewing while we were talking about stuff.
Listen, Dragon Age Inquisition is a wonderful game.
You're lucky you're not in this discussion, because I'm going to be throwing these at people's faces pretty soon.
Oh, God.
GameSpot of old used to do a lot of interesting sort of off-platform nominees, like best art, technical, best art.
Best competitive multiplayer, best cooperative multiplayer, best story, best ending, best character.
Exactly. So I wanted to harp back to those days. So I've got 5 questions. I've told you the questions. I don't know what the answers are. Both of you are going to have to try and convince me that you have the right answer for this. And I'm going to throw Airheads at you while you do it. If you win. If you win, you get Airheads, all right? So
win,
5 questions. I hope you put good thought into this, because me and Chris are going to be criticizing you pretty good. And we've been talking for an hour and 45 minutes now, so we're pretty good at shutting down arguments.
Salty.
So first one. Biggest game disappointment of 2014, Alexa.
I have the right answer, and it's Assassin's Creed Unity.
Okay, why?
So not only was it sort of like, didn't really iterate on previous Assassin's Creed mechanics too much, but also like Assassin's Creed story is usually pretty good. They want you to care for the character, but that whole Abstergo thing jumped the shark so many games ago, and I didn't care about the relationship between the 2 protagonists. It was supposed to be a love story, it didn't really work out.
Yeah.
I didn't believe it, and I just thought it was not that good. Wah.
Really? All right,
Yeah.
Peter Brown, can you get more disappointing than that?
Okay, so one of the greatest action series of all time is Ninja Gaiden, right?
Okay.
And,
Oh, and I know where this is
so
going.
the man behind that is no longer with the team to develop it. It's my turn to talk. Keep your mouth shut, please. He's gone, but Koei Tecmo is developing a new Ninja Gaiden game, and within developing it, they had Keiji Inafune, the man behind Mega Man, the guy behind Onimusha. He also worked on some of the Resident Evil games. This wonderful game designer. What the result was Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z, aka a steaming pile of crap. This game had a really eye-catching presentation, but it had a horribly non-funny, vulgar script. The action did not flow well together at all, and this is a game that's designed on this legacy of a great action series. It had beautiful graphics, but using them, they just basically put out a lot of just vomiting and blood spewing. It wasn't actually put to great effect. The game had a pedigree behind it. It could have been great. Turned out awful.
Ninjas, zombies, the game!
Yeah, this is hard because I was anticipating Watch Dogs to be mentioned, which kind of fell into the Assassin's Creed section. But I remember playing Ninja Gaiden Ninja Gaiden Z, and thinking, man, this is a piece of hot trash. So, Peter Brown, you win!
Yes.
First one.
Yes.
Airheads Bite-Sized Brawl, round 1 winner, Mr. Peter Brown. All right, round 2.
Okay.
You thought that one was hard. What was your biggest surprise of 2014? Peter, go.
Biggest surprise for me was Sunset Overdrive.
Okay.
After many previews that were written on GameSpot and talking to my colleagues oh yeah, this game is just, it's not really there. I was assigned the review, and a couple hours in, I was like, yeah, it's pretty as hell, but nothing really there. Eventually that game opened up, and it was just a blast to play. I could skate my way on top of rooftops, electric lines, all the way across the city, finding these ridiculous guns destroying huge throngs of enemies, and there was no slowdown at any point. It was just a really, really fun game. And unlike Ninja Gaiden Z, where this tried to be really vulgar, it did so in a way where you didn't feel like the actors were forcing it.
Okay.
The swears rolled off their tongue, the insults kind of rolled off their tongue. And in this sort of aftermath of a horrible apocalypse where most games take it and everything's really downtrodden, they were lighthearted about the whole thing. They're like, yeah, shit's fucked up, but you know what? Whatever, we're just going with it.
Okay.
So here's a gun.
Strong argument. Also, almost exactly on 1 minute. Well done. Alexa, go for it. Beat that.
Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor.
Okay.
Think of every Lord of the Rings game that has ever come out, with the exception of maybe the EA Two Towers and Return of the King game. When they announced this game, everyone went, oh, it's a Lord of the Rings game. And then when they started showing footage, because that IP has been treated pretty poorly.
Yeah.
And then they started showing footage, and people were like, oh, it's just Batman, Lord of the Rings. It's Assassin's Creed with Aragorn, meh, stuff like that. And then they started showing the Nemesis system, and people were like, oh, okay, maybe. And then the game came out, and everyone freaking loves it. Not only has it rejuvenated the Lord of the Rings IP, but it's rejuvenated the action-adventure genre. And that's why it's the right answer.
You know what? This side of the release of Shadow of Mordor, it's easy to forget that we had super Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor apathy but a couple of months earlier. I remember Michael DePlatter coming on our stage at E3.
Not one, not two, but three.
3 times! And talking about the Nemesis system and all. And even then, it seemed really good, but even then it didn't. It was
still
when
one
you
of those
played
things
that
where you're
game.
like, oh man, that sounds cool, but damn, I don't know if you're going to pull that off at all.
But Sunset Overdrive is a pretty good shout, but you don't win. It's all about Mordor. Mordor!
Whoa, what?
There you go. Question 3. The Airheads Bite-Sized Brawl.
Mother F.
This is a good one. Which console in 2014 had the better exclusives? Obviously, it's PC, but let's find out about the 2 other ones.
System Wars, the question.
Alexa, System Wars, the question. Go.
My vote is for the PlayStation 4.
Okay.
And my argument is because most of the games that are showing really innovative, really unique experiences in 2014 have been indie games. The PlayStation 4 has, Flow, Flower, and Journey, but they also got Hohokam. They got Transistor, which was your favorite, which you absolutely
look at
love.
you, placating me.
I like it.
Work.
And there's just so much indie love surrounding it, and sort of looking forward.
Octodad.
Octodad as well.
Hey, you're not allowed.
Thank you.
Stop it! Stop it!
All of those experiences are on, they're on PC, but they're also console only on PlayStation. And I think moving forward, we're going to see Sony really cultivating that. It was evident at PSX this past weekend. So I think that's why the PlayStation 4 is the best console.
Okay, which console are you going for, Peter?
There's only one right answer. It's the Wii U.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And my reasoning is Mario Kart, Super Smash Bros., Bayonetta 2, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, other games that are great. No, I think Nintendo does some things that no other company can do, and that is pack these really interesting mechanics into games that are so approachable by everybody, and they're so like well refined. You never find issues that plague other games where things are broken or it's like inconsistent or there's really poor pacing. And then you have something like Bayonetta 2, which is just this tour de force of like over-the-top action. It's a beautiful game on a system that's usually like given like kind of like the short end of the stick when it comes to technical praise. And it's a fantastic action game that's nearly flawless in every regard.
All right, I think when you did the whole Mario Kart and the Smash Bros and the other games.
But there's no transistor on Wii U.
Tracker.
I know there's no transistor, but I bought a Wii U last week, so in the interest of not having buyer's remorse. Peter Brown!
Yeah, okay, wait.
Round 3.
Hold on. She got 3 for winning the first round.
I'm counting the numbers. The Airheads.
I'm counting the Airheads.
I am in charge of the Airheads bite-sized brawl. I'll have you. I am the czar
You're the
of
dictator.
the bite-sized brawl. You think I don't have like 50 boxes of this at home? I'm in charge. 2-1 right now. Question 4. What was the best-looking visual game of 2014? Peter Brown.
Bayonetta 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
So, like I said, that game is, forget the platform that it's on and that it looks great on a system, that's usually like given that,
You sure you want me to forget that? It seems
Forget
pretty
about
important.
It. Forget about it. That game has such incredible scale to it with such ornate detail in almost every aspect. And it is all like this sort of resolution where you're not like, oh yeah, it's big, but it's kind of muddy because the screen's so big, so they gotta, no, nothing is dialed down. That game is fast, humongous, ornate, colorful, and it has beautiful artistic design.
Was it 1080-60?
Was it 1080-60?
Was it 1080-60?
I don't know. I don't care.
Sounds like it wasn't 1080-60. Alexa, you want to win this? You know what to do. What's your video game? Was it 1080-60?
Sunset Overdrive.
Was it 1080-60?
Maybe.
No.
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 900p.
No.
Nobody's winning this round.
Hey, Danny.
900p.
Danny, you know what it was?
What?
Transistor.
Transistor.
Oh yeah, it's true. Yeah.
It was Transistor.
Both of you messed up this one. All right, so Sunset. Why
Sunset
Sunset?
Overdrive. Because it's beautiful, it's colorful, you have all those different options. Part of what I loved about it is the customization options. You can make yourself look like anyone you wanted to look like. And flying around that city not only made you feel powerful, but it was fun to watch yourself fly across that city and all those colors whizzing by and all of that sort of brightness. And for a game that's sort of really like, it's really dark, like you're fighting at the apocalypse and everyone around you is turning into these monsters, I think that beauty really lent itself to it. And it was just...
Do that again.
Knocked over my Airheads.
That's pretty good. Do that again one more time. You do the poo thing. To me, I'm the king of the Airheads bite-sized ball.
Honestly.
I think we should usurp the
It was colorful like
we know.
Airheads.
Well, we know who wins that one. You didn't need to do that bit at the end. That was unnecessary. But
collusion.
You want one?
Collusion.
All right, there you go. All right, we got a deadlock. 2 and 2, or that way, I guess. It's probably better if we do it that way.
I have more candy.
It's not about candy. It's not about how much candy.
Maybe not to you, but to me.
Look, I've given. These are basically all the presents I'm bringing home to Ireland for my family, so I can give you only the 3 that are left, and then the rest are mine. The last question, folks. The most important video game question you'll answer in 2014 to win the Airheads Bite-Sized Brawl. What was the weirdest game of 2014, Alexa?
This is, I'm jumping on what he said earlier, I'm going with Bayonetta 2.
Oh, wow.
Because, one, it's a perfect action game. We talked about this earlier.
That's not weird.
Mechanically. Well, it's weird because it's a perfect action game and you play as a lady who makes weapons and clothes out of her hair.
Yeah.
And the game is just like, I think it's weird personally that it's on the Wii U. Number 1, Mario, Bayonetta. But it's just the whole concept of like having just the whole damn thing. And it's totally weird.
Are you
and
saying
strange.
it's just not as weird because we knew about Bayonetta 1? Are you saying if Bayonetta 2 just came out with all the hair stuff?
No, I think it's still weird. I played Bayonetta 1 and I still think the whole thing is sort of a jumble of weirdness, but it works. And that's
even weirder.
And it makes you feel super powerful.
All right, strong contender, Peter Brown.
Sports Friends. Sports Friends includes...
Wait. Okay, go on, keep going.
What?
Keep going.
No,
keep going. I just, there was a game where you control a goat. There was a game where you control a slice of bread. There was...
That's not out yet.
Hold on. You're talking about unusual, right? Okay.
I said weird.
You said fun.
The question the question I got was unusual, and I'm going with Sports Friends because it has a bunch of games in it, including one called Johann Sebastian Joust.
Okay.
Where you use the PlayStation Move controllers and you like circle around your friends in real life. There's no TV involved. You're literally trying to like jostle your friends and prevent them from doing stuff. That is unusual as hell.
Are you saying Johann Sebastian Joust came out in 2014? Because I remember playing that back in 06.
No, but it's an actual release.
It did not come out. It did not come out
You
until
need a
Sports Friend.
PlayStation Move, and who owns a PlayStation Move?
That is not part
That's
of the
why it's weird.
No,
Only
that's
weirdos
negated.
own them.
No.
I have like 4 PlayStation Move controllers at home.
What?
I know.
That is weird.
I deep dove on PS Move and I've regretted it ever since.
It's also got the game Barabari Ball in it, but also the pole vaulting friends component.
Super Pole Riders.
Super Pole Riders.
Yeah.
We're using these really phallic-like
Sounds dirty.
things to sort of like
just a
bump
pole.
into each other and like prod your friends and get all weird with your phallus. And what's weirder than that?
Okay.
Weird.
Chris, I'm going to let you decide. We have been co-hosting this show all year long.
Yeah.
I feel like this is too hard a decision, so I'm going to ask you to do it. So here, I'm going to throw this at you, and then you throw it onto whoever.
Oh God, this
All
is
right.
still startling. I don't like it.
Well, there's only one game that I have accidentally, in the course of playing the game, bludgeoned a man in his genitals, and that is Johann Sebastian Joust. So that's 1 point. I got 3 though.
Oh, yeah,
These
yeah,
are
yeah,
no
yeah.
points,
What?
right? So, a lady attacking weird centaurs on the back of a jet with her hair. Weird. Also,
Okay.
yes. So
Yay.
Bayonetta. So I think the final decision here: who's going to win the Airheads bite-sized brawl? Bayonetta 2, too weird.
Oh.
Too weird, way too weird. Looking at any 2 seconds of that game, and it is the weirdest crap.
I have
Fair
all
point.
the candy.
I'm gonna hit
I
you
have
with the
one.
genitals.
There you go, Alexa wins.
Yes.
Airheads
share-
bite-sized
I'll share with
brawl.
you guys.
Erte is gesticulating, thumbs down in the background. You probably wanted Destiny to win. Get out of here.
Not your friend.
Mount your friends?
Mount your friends.
Mount your friends. Pretty
friends.
weird. It's pretty weird.
Yeah.
It's pretty weird. All right.
Mounting your friends is
Nice
weird.
work. Okay, we're almost done, but the folks at home can also win a big old bunch of Airheads as well. We're giving away a bunch of candy plus a bunch of video games. You're going to win a Game of the Year's prize pack, which includes 5 games, 4 randos, and 1, which is the Game of the Year that we pick next week here on the lobby on Thursday, the 18th of December at 2 p.m. Pacific. So make sure you stick around to win the Game of the Year prize pack and all of these hella Airheads. All you have to do is tweet at GameSpot with the hashtags Airheads BSP. It's bite-sized brawl. Airheads BSP, and you also have to include BSB. Sorry, and you also have to include the hashtag sweeps with what you think should be our Game of the Year. So tweet at GameSpot with your pick for Game of the Year with 2 hashtags sweeps and Airheads BSP.
Brawl.
BSB.
Brawl.
Bite-sized brawl. Bite-sized brawl. Follow the information on screen, or just follow us on GameSpot on Twitter, and it'll all be there. Hashtags via the medium of voice are not something that that's my worst game of 2014.
Hashtags?
Is trying to say hashtags on camera, clearly. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching our nominee episode of The Lobby. This is the penultimate episode. Our final episode of The Lobby will, of course, be next Thursday, 2 p.m. Pacific, right here on GameSpot.com, where we will unveil the Game of the Year. But there is much more stuff to come in between then. We are revealing Games of the Year in terms of platforms starting tomorrow with Reissue, continuing all of this week and all of next week until we announce the Game of the Year on Thursday. And don't forget that there is also the User Choice Awards, which will be available. All that on our Game of the Year hub, which should be live on GameSpot, I think now. I think it's going. If it's not up now, it'll be in the next couple of minutes or so. So make sure you check out GameSpot.com and get your vote in as well. All right, it's been a fun year. 2014, it's
Hell
almost
yeah.
over. Thanks so much, guys, for coming on.
You're welcome.
We got to go back to covering the last remnants of video games that come out in December.
There are still them.
Yes.
Still happening.
They still do.
I saw
that.
Kevin Van Ord playing Limbo on Xbox One, because apparently that's happened.
That's back.
Yeah, so we better get back to that. But yeah, thanks to everyone for watching. Thanks to everyone in production for setting this whole show up. We will be back next Thursday, 2 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you then.